You are listening to Expert Adda podcast, and today's episode is specially based for the restaurant owners out there. And I have Kunal Lamba joining us for today from New Jersey. Before we actually start chit chatting, I would like to give a brief overview, a brief introduction about Kunal. Kunal has worked for 2 decades at executive levels in hotels and restaurants across 3 continents. He's a restaurateur, a TV personality, a live singer, all packed in someone who can easily be called as true entertainer and who knows the pulse of hospitality industry. Welcome to this podcast, Kunal. I am both excited and elated to host you here today. So, to get started, I wish to know the backstory, the story of when you identified your passion for food and actually decided to follow it.
My passion for food came with my upbringing. I was a son of a restaurateur. My dad used to run a restaurant. He was a manager and a partner there. So we would literally have butter chicken and dal makhani in our school tiffin. So I literally was born in a food environment where we had restaurant food all the time. I saw my dad's life. Yes, he spent less time with us, but I loved the fact that he used to dress up in a suit and go to work. So that was the initial part. Then I landed up in a hotel management course because of this passion, and because I was so bad at mathematics that I couldn't do what I really wanted to do, architecture. Somehow the entrance exams needed me to be good in mathematics, which doesn't make sense practically to be an architect, but somehow in India that's how the education is set up. So I landed up in hotel school, and which was my second preference, and I'm glad I did that. There was food which was a subject, so I studied for 4 years food and beverage as a subject along with other subjects. So this is how I was groomed to be in food business. I obviously landed a job with ITC Hotels in India as an executive trainee, which destined me to become a manager of a restaurant at a young age of 24. I was a manager of a 5-star hotels, 24-hour restaurant, what you call as coffee shops in India.
Wow.
So this was the parents' education, and my first job got me into food. So this is how I got into it.
This story sounds very yummy and smooth, but I'm sure there would have been some or the other setbacks when you started working in this sector all alone. So, what were those setbacks?
The initial setbacks. Now, my career has been an executive with a large hotel company and in India and in the US. But I think let's talk about how I opened my restaurant Kabab culture along with my partners and what setbacks we had. I think the PCC members might be more interested in that part. So I did have experience of running a restaurant, but not owning a restaurant and just getting a salary for someone else's restaurant was my experience. The first thing which I realized, not a setback, but was challenge, was I wanted to do something different in a market like New Jersey, which had a very set tone and doesn't welcome change very well, especially the Indian community, because we are so used to having a set way the Indian restaurants are, and we are comfortable with it, with their pricing, with their menus. So any surprises are like, okay, you better be very good if you are different. So that was a setback. In New York City, you could, because there are all sorts of people enjoying your cuisine and they don't have any preconceived notions. But the setback I had was I was in North Brunswick in New Jersey, a very saturated market with so many Indian restaurants, with 90% of Indian clientele coming to Indian restaurants. That was something which I was a little disappointed with, that I'm only serving Indian people. But then if you impress them, that means your food is really good, because they're also the most difficult customers, plus they're the best judges. If you can impress them, that means you're actually very good. So to do something different, like having a very small menu and not having like chicken tikka, chicken lababda, chicken makhni, which all of them mean the same thing. Chicken in a creamy, buttery, tomatoey, orange colored sauce. I wanted just one butter chicken. That's it. The second chicken dish will be something very different, maybe from South India. I just don't want too many similar curries, but people were used to, or are still used to, seeing, synonymous names. They want a lot of synonyms in a menu. I think that's what they like. Just aaj ye kha lete hain, kal wo kha lete hain, although it's the same thing pretty much. So, but they want different names and words. So this was a setback, I think. The second setback was finding a real chef, which got solved very soon. The chef we have at Kabab Culture is the chef we have had for 4 years, and thankfully we found him. But the initial challenge was to find the right chef, that his thoughts should match your thoughts. So these two were the initial setbacks, so to say.
Kunal, this is something that has always been on my mind, and look, I have the right person to answer this today. How is the profit making or economy model strategized in food and beverage industry especially?
How to make profit or the economy model. Okay. This is a very large subject. Now I'm talking about sit-down restaurants. Food business is very large. Fast food is different from fine dining and so on and so forth. And but overall, this is what I think everyone should know. Know your numbers. So these are the 4 percentages which I'm going to tell you. If your business is adhering to these percentages, more often than not, you should be making a decent profit. Now, there are exceptions because of there are exceptions. But overall, remember, your food cost, the cost of raw food, and I should say material cost. See, a cost of goods sold in other businesses, which is food and liquor cost combined. Now, food cost should be about 21 to 25%, and if you have a liquor license, then that should be about 15 to 18%. What is food cost? If you're selling a dish for $100, then the raw material cost should be about 21 to 25. Not every dish is not going to be 21 to 25. Some dishes will be going to 30, like a lobster dish, or 35. But something like a roti or a plain rice, your food cost might be just 5% or maybe less. So overall food cost, not per dish. Average food cost of the whole restaurant should be about 21 to 25%. It's very easy in Indian restaurants to get that food cost, just so you know. There are Indian restaurants which operate with 18% food cost also very often. Liquor cost is 15 to 18%. That stays same for everyone, whatever cuisine you are at. So these percentages you have to remember. 21 to 25 food cost. 25, if your food cost is above 25, please, you're doing something really crazy or your pricing is wrong. Occupancy cost, which is the rent. Now here, leave New York City out of the equation. This percentage which I'm going to tell you doesn't apply. It should be about 8 to 10%. In New York City, it could go a little above, and then that will be offset by increase in prices. That's occupancy cost, which is the rent. And then is the staff, which will break you a lot. It can't be more than 30%. Many restaurants do operate, even Kabab Culture, for example, did have a percentage at one point which was more than this. 20 to 30% is what I would say. So if you can manage your 20 to 30%, I think you can definitely make profit. So to reiterate, 20 to 30% staff, occupancy cost, which is the rent, not more than 10%. Food cost 21 to 25, although can be less than 20 also in certain restaurants, vegetarian ones especially. And liquor cost should be about 15 to 18%. So if you have these percentages right, you should be making money.
That is just so detailed. I never knew this.
And remember one thing, you will not run your house with one restaurant. You have to have multiple restaurants more often than not to sustain a living. So just one restaurant, it's very seldom that people would make a decent living with just one restaurant. So you have to multiply this into numerous restaurants. So this is very overall picture. Also, one more thing, do not be one-dimensional. There are so many avenues of making money in a restaurant. So if you might start with a sit-down restaurant, but then look at catering, look at events. When you're building the restaurant, try and see if your restaurant can be bought for a buyout and all that stuff. So that's important. And obviously have a solid takeout menu as well. Your dishes should be able to be carried out. So just don't have one-dimensional way of making money. Also, think about this. You don't just open for dinner. Try and open for lunch and dinner. You're paying rent for 24 hours, right? Why you're making money only in 4 or 5 hours in a day. So think about that.
Kunal, as I mentioned earlier, also that you've worked in three different continents. So, talking about India and US, shifting from the Indian market to US and other international markets as well, what were the key changes that you made to your menu and food's taste?
Shifting from Indian market to the US. Okay. Now, as far as the menu and the food goes, there are two things which become different from India. Now, in America, the menu has to be more diverse. I don't mean more number of dishes, which I'm really against. I think your menu should be very limited. More diverse in the sense of you can't just have all Punjabi dishes in an Indian restaurant scenario. You can't have only spicy dishes. You have to have a variety of flavors and textures and profiles, because there are all sorts of people who come to your restaurant. That's one thing. And number two, your descriptions of food have to be very, very perfect and understandable to an American or an Indian born and raised American. Like, I love to use, for example, when I describe chicken tikka masala to someone, chicken tenders or chicken tikka, for example. How do I describe? I call them chicken tenders. Then the people understand it's a small piece of soft grilled or fried chicken. So in grilled chicken tenders. Chicken tender is something which you will use in America. You will never use that word in India. But you will be using such terminology in describing your menu. Descriptions have to be very important, because the person will make a picture in their mind of what he's eating. You can't put literally photos like Chinese restaurants, although that's not a bad idea for takeout, but in a sit down menu it doesn't look good. So your descriptions have to be such that a person of American origin or raised and born in America should be able to make a picture of the dish. In India, it doesn't matter, because people generally know what the dish is because they've grown up eating it. It's in their DNA. But here you have to kind of explain very well.
A very quick question that just came to my mind. Any three transformations that you sense in this industry in, say, 5 years from now?
There are many transformations. First of all, let's talk about Indian restaurants, and then I'll talk about general, about any kind of restaurants. Indian restaurants, I think non-Indian people will cook Indian food in Indian restaurants. The whole generation of cooks and chefs is now phasing out. Either they are getting old and the new ones are not coming. It's very difficult to get chefs from India. There is no very easy legal way to get them here. So I think Spanish people and regular American, Hispanic, whatever people will have to start cooking Indian food in Indian restaurants. That's one thing which I'm already seeing. I've seen some Spanish tanduriyas churning out amazing kebabs and rotis. They probably do. It's not their marinations. The head chef, who happens to be Indian, explains them, but all the work is done by non-Indian people. That's one thing which you will see in Indian restaurants. Now let's talk about in restaurants in general. I think staffing wise, health benefits, sign-on bonus, paid time off. It's a good time for people to work in restaurants, because in the pandemic, a lot of people have left the restaurant business, pursued their own careers, and they've realized, because it's a tough job. So a lot of people have gone away from the labor market. So to get people is very difficult right now. So higher pay, sign-on bonus, paid time off, higher health insurance is something which we'll see being offered. So if employees ask you, I think this is the wave, and you are just riding the wave. It's not abnormal for them to ask. The menus will become smaller because of two things: because people are getting more specific about food, and also because of staff shortages, which I just explained. So menus will become more concise and small, and I really think that's good, because quality is always inversely proportional to quantity. Then also food, another one which I'll say, I'm already done three, but transparency of ingredients will be very important. People are taking their food very seriously, so you have to explain them exactly what's going on in their food So not just organic chicken, but a little more information about that you're not using any hormones, what exactly are the spices you're using, and all that stuff should be there on menus.
Wow, I mean, I absolutely agree with you, and thank you for sharing such a pool of knowledge and experiences here with our listeners today. I won't do justice to the audience if I end this podcast without listening to your favorite Indian retro melody.
My favorite retro melody. Okay, well, since we're talking about food and everything, I guess I'll sing a food song.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's a fun song, you know. ओ मैं तो रास्ते से जा रहा था, ओ मैं तो भेल पूरी खा रहा था, ओ मैं तो लड़की घुमा रहा था, रास्ते से जा रहा था, भेल पूरी खा रहा था, लड़की घुमा रहा था, तुझको मिर्ची लगी तो मैं क्या करूं, तुझको मिर्ची लगी तो मैं क्या करूं.
Completely mesmerizing. It was wonderful speaking to you, Kunal. Thanks again for being here at the show.
Thank you.
To keep listening to our upcoming episodes or to share your story, please visit punjabichamber.com or contact us by writing to the address mentioned in the description.